A young life taken too soon, shot while trying to protect others, all innocent bystanders.
And Xavion, who was in high school, hadn't even gotten started in life.
He was the baby. He was the youngest of the family. And he turned out to be the biggest. Turned out to be the one with the most courage.
And now, the life of a 15-year-old from Knoxville is sparking a conversation nationwide.
If we don't do anything more about it, then Xavion did die in vain.
The real reason I think that people get involved in gang activity and join gangs is there's a void.
What we can do to help those at risk, and how community leaders hope to put a stop to the violence.
I think his effort and his sacrifice was a way to wake the city up.
Staying true to what Xavion would have wanted. A 10 Listens special starts now.
Thank you for joining us for our first 10 Listens special. I'm Robin Wilhoit.
And I'm John Becker. It isn't often a 15-year-old creates social change, but the sudden loss of Xavion Dobson has sparked reaction from Knoxville to the White House and across the country.
WBIR 10 News anchor Mary Scott shows us how Xavion's heroic story has touched his principal, the president, and so many others.
Chances are, Xavion Dobson was not thinking about being a hero on December 17, 2015.
But unfortunately, he wasn't lucky, but he saved 2 lives.
Chances are, he was thinking about football.
We work out every day to try to better ourselves.
Or school, or just being a 15-year-old.
It's what we've been doing like every day.
But what Xavion did on that night took more courage than many of us have.
Just know that I miss him. I miss my brother.
Xavion's older brother, Zach, was there when police say gang members started shooting randomly at teenagers. Xavion dove on top of 3 friends, saving their lives, but losing his.
He laying there, and I just pick him up and put him in my arms. He was dead.
The story of his bravery spread quickly.
We received one today from Alaska, Indiana, New Jersey, Arizona.
Moving people who see violence every day.
Sorry.
It started a grassroots movement to find solutions to the recent violence in Knoxville, even bringing current and former gang members to an unprecedented meeting.
There's a spirit that was in that room, though it was a lot of heaviness because of the situation, because of what happened with Xavion, because of what happened to all these other killings. Tragedy become triumph.
An example the President of the United States used in his address to the nation.
We are not asked to do what Xavion Dobson did. We're not asked to have shoulders that big, a heart that strong, reactions that quick. I'm not asking people to have that same level of courage or sacrifice or love.
Chances are Xavion didn't intend to change his community, but he may be the catalyst to spark that change. Mary Scott, WBIR 10 News.
And of course, the story of Xavion Dobson has touched the hearts of many people all across our community, even across the country. And we have several who will be joining us over the next 30 minutes.
Joining us, Jackie Clay from Save Our Sons. Nice to have you with us. Rob Spees, who's the principal of Fulton High School, and next to him, Rob Black, the head football coach at Fulton. We appreciate all of you being here to talk about this. And Coach, let's start with you. I'd like to hear from each of you the impact Xavion had on you personally.
Well, Xavion was one of those kids who, knew his role, and as a coach, we're looking for kids to be leaders and kids that other kids would follow, and sometimes that falls on a senior's shoulders most of the time. But he was just one of those kids as a sophomore that people followed, and I guess one of the things that really stood out about him is he was a fun kid, but he knew where the line was. He knew when it was time to be serious and it was time to go to work, he did that. And when it was time to have fun, he did that with the best of them as well. So, a major loss for our program for sure.
Principal Spees?
When I think back about Zay and what he did for our community and did for those girls that night, I think about, oftentimes my role as a principal is if there's ever tragedy in my school or like that, it's my job to jump in front of a bullet for somebody, to lay down, to take care of a student or a teacher for that matter. And I've often kind of wondered, would I make that sacrifice? Would I make that decision? And that's the thing about Zay, is that he didn't make a decision. He just reacted in the moment on what he thought was the right thing to do, and that was to take care of other people and to sacrifice and give. And so I've just kind of used that as I think about my actions, to hold me accountable to making the best decisions to impact other people.
Jackie, how about you?
Well, what happened to Zavion was tragic, but I've learned from this whole situation that sometimes tragedy can be an opportunity, and this has really been an opportunity for me to start thinking about possibilities, and I think it's been that opportunity for other people too, to unite. I've gotten calls, emails, letters from people saying, I just want to know what I can do to help. And so he didn't give his life in vain, because it sparked a passion in other people to see what they can do on a personal level to help change our community.
I couldn't agree more. A passion has been sparked, and so many people keep asking, what can I do then? What part can I play in addressing this? What would you say to those people?
Well, I'd say you can find a child that is in your church. You can find a child in your neighborhood, and you can be a caring adult for that person. That's something that you can do on a personal level. You could spend more time with your family. You can connect somebody that you know to a resource, an available resource in our community, and that's something that people can do that doesn't cost a lot of money. It just costs them some time.
It's relationships.
Exactly.
Principal Spies, you've had a lot of conversations about this with Fulton students, with the Fulton community. What has come out of those conversations so far?
I think at first there was a lot of grief, but it's turned to a lot of hope and commitment to doing what's right, to bettering each person and taking advantage of this opportunity to find the good in it. And it would be easy for us to stay in a negative mindset about this, but I think Ms. Clay is right in that we've got to find some way to turn this into a positive. And the longer this conversation goes on, the more the positive message gets out there. I think definitely, I believe so strongly in engagement for students to be successful, whether it's an engagement in extracurriculars through sports or the band or a club or organization or a faith-based group, whatever it may be, is to continue to keep kids engaged with a meaningful relationships with caring adults is what's going to drive this forward.
Coach, we're going to hear more from you in just a moment, but first to one of those powerful signs of Zavion's influence, the reaction and support we've seen in the Fulton community for his family.
WBIR 10 News reporter Michael Crow shows us some of that public support.
In the halls of Fulton High School, it sounded like any other day. But one look at the dress code and you'll see it's anything but.
And you're seeing the number 24 and several hashtags, Live Long Zay and 24 Strong. And
Fulton's principal set aside a day last week for students to wear these shirts, number 24, to honor Zavion Dobson, gunned down before Christmas. But even though he's gone, you can't go more than a few feet without still seeing his face. Just ask his coach.
It's amazing to see our kids step up in situations like this. And again, that just shows you the character of Zavion and how that has kind of spilled over into our school family here.
It makes his teammates think, what would Zay say seeing this?
Oh, God. He's probably saying, I'm famous. What you gonna do now? What you gonna do now? That's probably what he's saying. That's what I can hear him saying.
Jerry and Green says this support shows Zavion's impact.
Zay was he was our brother. He was our teammate. He was so much more than a friend, you know what I'm saying? So the shirt just symbolizes what he stood for.
And for Coach Black, it shows how these teens are dealing with a difficult loss together.
You know, our students step up and support each other, and our students are there for each other and know each other's needs.
That's what Fulton is all about, unity, even in the face of tragedy.
Oh, Fulton community, we're so big. Everybody loves each other. We stick together through everything, you know what I'm saying?
It's why the shirts inside echo the sign out front, a sign that hasn't changed since they lost Zavion. In Knoxville, Michael Crow, 10 News.
And all the money raised from those T-shirt sales will go to the Dobson family.
There is also a scholarship in Zavion's honor at Fulton High. Both have raised thousands of dollars. Of course, we are continuing our conversation with our guests this afternoon. And from each of your perspectives, could you give me a sense of how big of a problem is gang violence in your respective worlds, Coach?
Well, you know, it's not something, I guess it's something years ago that we thought a lot about, and it seemed like it kind of went away, and now today it's almost like it's come back, but it's come back, you know, magnified. And you start hearing more and more, and I guess what has hit home with me is you know, when an event like this happens and then another follows and another follows and another follows, and I mean, people are scared, you know, to go out. And you know, again, I think we've got to do what we're doing right now and try to find a way to reach our young people and hold those young people accountable. And like Mr. Speed said, get those people involved in organizations that are positive and give them opportunities to do things with their life instead of just have a lot of downtime where they get caught up in stuff like that.
Principal Spees, have you seen it worsen or lessen since you've been a principal?
I think at the high school level, I see less of it in the schools. You know, what I think we see in the community is kids who are moved on from high school, who are finding more involvement once they get out of high school. They're not necessarily finding those positive avenues, you know, through, you know, attending a college, attending a technical school, going on to a meaningful career. So my thing is, what can we do with kids while they're in high school to give them more opportunities when they get out of high school to be successful in their adult lifehood?
Ms. Clay, let's talk about kids who may find themselves in that world, though, of a gang. What is key to getting them out of that life?
Well, I think a caring adult is key. You'll hear I've heard from former gang members about why they join gangs, and some of that is because they don't have family at home. Not always. Some kids get into it because they're intrigued by the lifestyle, but by and large, kids get involved in that life because they don't have a place where they feel protected and safe and cared for. So we have to give these kids an opportunity to match up with adults who they feel they can relate to, who care about what's going on with them and express that, who take a genuine interest in their livelihood.
And that goes back to what you were saying earlier. Take time to identify a child, a person, a young person who could use that in their life. Take that step.
Well, throughout the last few weeks, we have been listening to our viewers on the subject of violence in our community, and they've been weighing in through social media.
And for that part of the conversation, we turn now to 10 News anchor Beth Haynes. Actually, we will be continuing that momentarily, but we do want to bring it back to our guest right now. And I have to think this has been something that has rattled, obviously, our community. But do you think, Principal, do you think it has strengthened the school to a degree?
I think without a doubt, you've seen us as a school rally around each other, rally around kids, rally around staff. And one of the really neat things for me is to see the way Knoxville's rallied around this. You know, just in terms of the scholarship you mentioned earlier, we've raised, you know, probably around $12,000–13,000 for that scholarship. We got a check the other day from Pigeon Forge. We went and played Pigeon Forge in basketball. They made a donation. I got a call from Ricky Norris, who's the head basketball coach at Webb School. We go to see them next Tuesday. They're going to donate all their gate money to the scholarship, as well as take up a collection there. I talked to a friend of mine, Ronnie Roberts, athletic director at Loudon High School. They're sending a donation over. So it's really just been a story that's impacted all of East Tennessee, and to see our community pull together, which I think is such the strength of East Tennessee.
And well said. Jackie, your anecdotal evidence, just getting back to Robin's question about how do you pull somebody out of that lifestyle, do you have some success stories? I know you've seen them. Does one come to mind?
Well, one comes to mind. He spoke at a summit that we held last year. His name is Kwabena Miller. He was involved with gangs, changed his life around, started going to church, has a job right now working for CAT, and he's a success story. He credits the time that he spent in prison and church with helping him to turn it all around. He found his support system at church.
We want to go now to Beth Haynes, who is monitoring what people in our community are having to say, how they are adding to this conversation. Beth?
Well, Robin and John, we're certainly following this on social media, and there are a variety of hashtags that people are using, from love wins to long live Zay. And Brooke Hartman, one of those that's commenting on social media. She's an educator, saying she can't even express her awe of the Fulton community, particularly students, staff, parents. Another person who changed their name to Hero number 24, noting how many people changed their names to reflect Zavion's death. And someone who's using the name Long Live Zay tweeting, "It's almost been a month since the shooting, and he misses his friend," certainly sharing the sentiments of so many in the Fulton community and here in East Tennessee. And this Instagram post right here challenges everyone to leave behind a nation worthy of Zavion's sacrifice. And finally, I want to share this Instagram post. I think it sums it up, a picture of Zavion and saying next to it, "This is a hero." You can certainly join in the conversation by tweeting your questions, your comments to WBIR, or using the hashtag Zavion Dobson on social media like these individuals did. Robin and John.
With more from our viewers, thank you, Beth. And the death of Zavion struck a nerve certainly at the highest levels of the Knoxville Police Department. Officers working the streets have ramped up their efforts to combat violence tied to gangs.
Here's 10 News anchor Abby Ham with her interview with Knoxville Police Chief David Roush about the history of gangs in our community.
Bloods, Crips, drugs, guns. In the 80s and 90s, gang activity here in East Tennessee used to be fairly cut and dry.
Back then we had two separate gangs, right? We had the East Side and we had the West Side. We had the Bloods and the Crips. That was it. Well, it's not the way it is today.
Today, KPD says gangs are multifaceted.
You've got all of these different little factions within that, and they're not specific East Side or West Side anymore. Now it's these 3 blocks over here and 4 blocks next to it, or 2 blocks over here, and it's very loose. There's not a tight-knit organizational structure for all of it.
For example, you could have someone who identifies as a Crip living here, and next door, someone who's a member of the Blood sect, and here a Crip, and here a Blood, and so on. This gang pattern can fill a neighborhood, a city, which makes fighting gang violence harder for law enforcement.
So one is it's not completely organized like it had been in the past. So that's a challenge as we step forward to try to bring peace. Right? Before we could have stepped to, or someone in the community could have stepped to those leaders and said, hey, let's knock this off.
And Chief Roush says they had success doing so in the 90s, but now there are so many different gang leaders and groups, and they may not all have the same agenda.
The agenda before was turf and drugs and prostitution and guns, and that's kind of what they operated under. Now it's primarily drugs. There's still some of that other stuff in there, but it's primarily drugs.
Chief Roush says the key to ridding our community of gang violence is you.
You know your kid's involved in it, and if you don't, you need to. And if you see your kid going out of the house, you know your kid carries a gun, and they're leaving the house, call the police before that kid gets killed.
Abby Ham, WBIR 10 News.
Certainly, parental involvement so key to making sure kids stay safe in our community.
And we have heard from Chief Roush about the law enforcement side. Joining us now, members of our community. Andre Conte and Rick Staples from the local organization 100 Black Men joining us now, as well as Pastor Daryl Arnold from Overcoming Believers Church. Gentlemen, thank you for being here. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Pastor, you had a unique meeting. We're going to get to that in a moment. But first, I want to know from you if people see a warning sign in a child or young man, young woman who are headed down the wrong path, what do you say is a good way to identify that and get them on the right path?
I think one of the ways to identify it is to see a change of behavior. If you have been guiding your child in a certain way and you sense that there's a change of behavior in their lives, then I think it's very important to dialogue with them. You know, I've got teenage girls and I've got very young boys, but you know, teenagers, they get to the point where they don't really want to talk to you much, and they start shutting themselves up in their rooms and connecting with a different group of people. Those are to me, are the red flags that you really need to sit down and have some conversations with your child.
Andre and Rick, of course, you all are with 100 Black Men, and you know the importance of giving young men an opportunity to belong. Tell us about 100 Black Men. What do you provide that fills that void?
Right. You know, so we come as men who have been through it all, you know, so we come across sector of people, you know, so we have businessmen, teachers, activists, and we came from those same backgrounds, you know, so I was around 1995 when gang violence at its peak back then, and that's when the 100 Black Men were formed to address that. So that's what the 100 Black Men are all about, is to empower the African American community, again, through education, health and wellness, economic empowerment. And our flagship program is mentoring. And we mentor young boys from 9 all the way to 18 and sometimes past 18 because we've been through those pathways. We know some lessons, so we try to give them those lessons, not just how to be a man, but to navigate through this society as a black male.
Mr. Staples, you knew Xavion personally. What do you hope his legacy will be?
I spoke to his mother earlier, and we had a long conversation about that. After the media lose interest and people stop coming by to check on Zenobia, we have to make sure that we're going to establish some things so people remember the sacrifices Xavion made. He stood up as a sacrifice to affect our country. Right now, especially with social media and so much coverage on so many negative things, we're split in the country about our differences instead of the things that bring us together. And Xavion, as you know, had a chance to escape those bullets, but in a split second he chose to give his life up so other people could live. So we have to figure out a way to carry that on. And in speaking to Zenobia, we're thinking about a number of different things, but it's to remain vigilant, understand that he sacrificed himself for others, and that's the greatest sense of service beyond yourself. And we all as individuals can think about one thing we could do for others as a sacrifice to keep his legacy going.
We will continue our conversation, gentlemen, but first, city and church leaders are searching for ways to reach young people at risk of joining gangs. The problem is top of mind after a string of shootings, of course.
We turn back to WBIR 10 News anchor Mary Scott, who looks at the mentoring already underway.
I didn't join a gang because I was hardcore, because I was tough.
Kwabena Miller has been there.
I simply just wanted to be accepted.
In the 90s, he was in a Knoxville gang.
I wanted a sense of belonging. I wanted the love. The love is attractive. And once you get involved, once you start going to war, you start developing this sense of hardness.
Now he would be labeled the type of at-risk youth he's hoping to reach. Miller is one of the organizers of the group Heal the Land Knoxville. Members of Overcoming Believers Church started the group to help get through to young people immediately after Xavion Dobson's death, an innocent 15-year-old killed by gang violence.
I think his effort and his sacrifice was a way to wake the city up.
The group was able to gather current and former gang members to have a frank discussion about violence. City Council member George Wallace attended.
Not only was it emotional, not only was it raw and information and raw candidly, but I think they came away with 3 or 4 things that they planned to do in the next 30 days.
Xavion's death also sparked Knoxville Mayor Madeline Rogero to propose expanding city programs like Emerald Youth, the Boys and Girls Club, and Save Our Sons to keep kids engaged and off the streets.
If we don't do anything more about it, then Xavion did die in vain.
And she called for everyone to be involved.
Give a kid a chance. You know, the more opportunities we have for kids, the less opportunity that innocent children like Xavion will become a victim.
Mary Scott, WBIR 10 News.
And as we heard in Mary's story, Overcoming Believers Church hosted a meeting of past gang members, current gang members, people in the community to shine the light on this issue. Joining us, Pastor, we thank you for that effort of bringing people together. How important was that, number one, to bring everyone together, to talk about this, to shine the light on it? And it doesn't just end there, because now people are coming together on Monday for the Martin Luther King parade.
I really just was a resource. I don't want to take any credit at all for pulling that together. Actually, the guys in the streets pulled that together, and people who had walked that walk and lived that life, and some even still living that life, decided we're tired of seeing boys in boxes, and we're tired of visiting our loved ones and our nephews and our nieces in jail. And so really, I just stood up as a resource along with some wonderful women of God from Lonsdale that pulled that together, and it really came out of, it wasn't me being audacious, it was me being desperate. I'm tired of burying kids, and we're all looking for answers, and Andre and I have been working on this with Save Our Sons for 3 years, and it just seems like we couldn't get the momentum and the traction that we needed to get. And I just really felt like that we needed to reach out to those that were still in the streets and that had some influence and some pull there to make it happen. It was phenomenal. The people on that stage were more articulate and powerful than I am any Sunday. And I believe that we really pulled some things together. I saw reconciliation come to pass like never before. So I think that God is going to do something great with this.
That is certainly encouraging. And Rick mentioned it as well. Andre, if we're sitting here 6 months, a year from now, what conversation do you hope we're having?
I think a conversation needs to happen in terms of long-term strategic goals, and how to provide like an infrastructure, and how to change culture, right? So it's one thing to say, what does unity look like? What does love look like? We want those things, but practically, what do those look like? You know, how do we get the young people involved? You know, instead of them being talked to, talk with. What are they seeing? Because they have an experience that either of us do not share, because they're seeing it every day. So I really want the young people, because they're the most affected, to be the change makers. I want them out there and having them have a say-so, have their voice into the room more than anybody else.
We made mention that on Monday, there's an opportunity for people to come together, and that is the Martin Luther Day Parade. There's an opportunity for people to show unity through T-shirts, correct?
Exactly. And so what we're wanting to take place is we like to see the entire community, no matter where you come from, differences in ethnicities and cultures and age and theological perspectives and doctrinal foundations. We want everyone to come together who feels led to do that, to come and to march with us on that day. Just what greater day than to do that as we celebrate the Martin Luther King holiday. And so we had someone to give us the shirts at cost, and you can get a shirt for $5 that says "Heal Our Land" on it, Knoxville. And we just loved for hundreds of people to walk with us from West Knoxville to East Knoxville, and to illustrate their unity and reconciliation.
Rick, are you encouraged?
What I want people to do is take action. This has nothing to do with skin color or what part, town you live on, or your socioeconomic status. This is our children, our babies, and it affects us all. So let's come together, let's listen to the young people, and let's take action so we can get this solved.
Gentlemen, we appreciate your perspective. Thanks for the conversation. We know it did not begin here, it does not end here, but that is it for our time in this 10 Listens special. Again, this conversation will continue.
That's right. All 3 Knoxville stations will come together to continue working to make our community a better and safer place. Coming up January 27th, Knoxville leaders in the community will gather at Fulton High School for a conversation about how we can end this violence as well.
If you can't make it out, you can watch at home on any of the 3 networks. This is an unprecedented connection between all of us. It starts at 7 o'clock. We'd like to hear from you about what actions should be taken as we look ahead after Zavion's death. We hope you join that conversation using the hashtag Zavion Dobson.
And that is our time for now. Thanks for joining us. 10 News at 6 is coming up.